The night was cold and silent. A thin wind moved slowly across the broken land, carrying dust and the smell of metal. The battlefield looked dead, but it was not. Nothing here was ever truly quiet. Far from the main camp, at the edge of a forgotten sector, there was a narrow ditch. It was not deep. It was not strong. It looked like a mistake, something left behind and ignored. And beside that ditch stood Cadet Eli Carter. His uniform was dirty. A dark coffee stain spread across his chest, still fresh. The other soldiers had laughed when it happened. Even now, the smell of cheap coffee followed him. "Perfect," one of them had said earlier. "Now you look exactly like your assignment." Eli didn't reply. He never did. He just stood there, holding his old rifle, staring into the dark. The order had been simple. Guard the ditch. That was it. No explanation. No support. No backup. Just a ditch. The main base was far behind him now. Its lights were small dots in the distance. No one was watching him. No one cared. Eli checked his equipment again. Old rifle. Half-charged battery. A broken scanner that kept blinking. One weak radio. And silence. He took a slow breath. "This doesn't make sense," he whispered to himself. Why would command send him here? This place had no value. No defense line. No supply route. Nothing. Ugh. He looked down at the ditch again. It was too straight. Too clean. Not natural. Eli stepped closer. He crouched down and touched the cold dirt. His fingers moved slowly across the edge. Then he saw it. A faint metal line, almost hidden under mud. His eyes narrowed. This isn't just a ditch. The radio suddenly made a sharp noise. Zzz. Eli quickly grabbed it. "Cadet Carter here. Do you read me?" Static. Then a broken voice. "Arter, hold position. Command. Say again. Not safe. Repeat. Not safe." The signal cut. Eli froze. His heart started beating faster. Not safe. What did that mean? Before he could think more, the scanner beeped. A weak signal. Movement. Far ahead. Eli slowly raised his rifle. The darkness in front of him felt heavier now. Like something was watching him. Minutes passed. Nothing moved. No sound. No light. Eli almost thought it was a false alarm. A shadow shifted. Very fast. Too fast. Eli didn't fire. He stayed still. His training told him one thing. Another movement. Closer this time. Low to the ground. Not human. Eli's grip tightened. "Scouts," he whispered. "Enemy scouts." They moved like ghosts. Silent. Careful. And they were heading straight for the ditch. Eli's mind raced. If scouts were here, that meant only one thing. A larger force was coming. This was not a useless place. This was an entry point. Hidden path. And he was the only one standing in their way. The radio came alive again. "Zzz. Carter report." Eli grabbed it fast. "I have enemy movement. Multiple scouts. This position is not empty, I repeat. This is an active zone." Static. Then silence. No answer. He tried again. "Command, respond. I need support." Nothing. The line was dead. Eli looked around. Still alone. Still forgotten. He let out a slow breath. "They left me here," he said quietly. But then something changed inside him. His fear didn't go away. But it became something else. Focus. The first scout moved closer. Eli could see it clearly now. Covered in dark armor that blended with the night. Its eyes glowed faintly. It was not human. It stopped near the edge of the ditch. Scanning. Searching. Eli stayed hidden in the shadow, barely breathing. The scout stepped into the ditch. That was the moment. Eli fired. Single shot. Clean. Silent. The scout dropped instantly. But it was too late to stay hidden now. More shadows appeared. 3, 5, maybe more. They spread out, moving fast. Eli moved quickly. He jumped into the ditch and dragged the body aside. His mind worked fast. Think. He looked at his broken scanner, then at the metal line under the dirt, then back at the darkness. Plans started forming. Eli pulled out a small tool and opened the scanner. Flickered weakly. "Come on, work," he muttered. He adjusted the wires. Bark. The screen turned stable. Not perfect, but usable. He placed it carefully near the ditch entrance. An alarm. Basic, but enough. The enemy scouts were getting closer. Eli could hear their soft steps now. He picked up loose metal pieces around him. Old scraps, broken parts. He placed them inside the ditch. Not randomly. Carefully. Step by step. Like a puzzle. Sound. The scanner beeped softly. One scout was right above him. Eli pressed himself into the mud. Silent. Will. The scout looked down. For a moment it felt like time stopped. Moved forward. Didn't see him. Eli let out a quiet breath. His heart was pounding hard now. This was no longer a simple guard duty. This was survival. The radio suddenly made a loud noise. Zzz. Eli froze. Too loud. Too sudden. The scouts reacted instantly. They turned toward the sound. Toward him. "Damn it!" Eli whispered. "No more hiding." The first scout jumped into the ditch. West. Aggressive. Eli moved at the last second. The scout stepped on a loose metal plate. Shifted. The ground under it broke slightly. The scout lost balance. Eli fired. Direct hit. Another one jumped in. Then another. Eli moved fast using the narrow space. He stayed low. Used the walls. Used the darkness. Move. Hide. Wait. Shot again. The ditch was no longer just a hole in the ground. It was turning into something else. Trap. Outside more shadows gathered. They were watching now. Careful. Confused. One of them made a strange sound. Signal. Eli didn't understand the words. But he understood the meaning. They were calling for backup. Eli looked up at the dark sky. "No help is coming," he said softly. Then he looked back at the ditch. At his small setup. At his limited weapons. He tightened his grip on the rifle. "Fine," he whispered. "I'll do it myself." The wind grew stronger. Dust moved across the ground. The night felt alive now. Dangerous. Heavy. The enemy didn't rush again. They waited. Studied. Learning. Eli knew what that meant. The next attack would be bigger. Smarter. Stronger. He leaned against the cold dirt wall. Just for a second. Just to breathe. His hands were shaking. His body was tired. But his eyes were sharp. New sound. Distant. Like something heavy moving. Eli slowly looked up. Far away beyond the darkness. Lights appeared. Whoa. Red. Moving. His face went still. "That's not scouts," he said quietly. The real force was coming. The radio came alive one. Last time. Very weak. Almost gone. Arter. Fall back. Repeat fall. Signal lost. Eli looked at the ditch. Then at the approaching lights. Then back at his rifle. He didn't move. Instead, he stepped deeper into the ditch. And prepared. The red lights moved slowly in the distance. Not fast. Not careless. Controlled. Disciplined. Eli Carter watched them from inside the ditch. His body pressed into the cold dirt. His breathing was slow now, steady. He forced it to be that way. Fear was still there. But it no longer controlled him. Now it sharpened him. The wind carried a low mechanical sound. Heavy steps. Metal against earth. The real force had arrived. Eli wiped the sweat from his forehead, leaving a streak of dirt across his face. His coffee-stained uniform was now almost fully covered in mud. He didn't care anymore. He looked down at his hands. Slight shaking. He tightened his grip. "Focus," he whispered. The broken scanner gave a soft beep. One signal. Then three. Then many. Eli's eyes moved quickly across the small flickering screen. "Not scouts anymore," he muttered. This was a unit. Organized. Dangerous. He slowly raised his head, just enough to see above the edge of the ditch. The red lights were closer now. Shapes formed in the darkness. Tall figures, armored, moving in perfect lines. Their weapons glowed faintly. And in the center, something bigger. Command unit. Eli ducked back down instantly. His mind started racing. You can't fight this head-on. You won't survive. He looked around the ditch. Narrow, uneven, full of loose metal scraps, broken panels, old cables. And that strange metal line under the dirt. Thought formed. Crazy, risky, but possible. They think this is just a ditch, Eli said quietly. A small, tired smile appeared on his face. Let's change that. Above him the enemy stopped. No movement, no attack. They were studying the area. Careful. Mart. One of them stepped forward. A larger figure. Its armor was heavier, darker. Its eyes glowed brighter than the others. Leader. It raised its arm. The unit spread out instantly, surrounding the ditch. Eli's heartbeat slowed. They're preparing for something. Then suddenly, a thin beam of light scanned across the ground, back and forth, searching. Eli pressed himself deeper into the mud. He grabbed a handful and spread it across his arms and face. Cold, wet, but it worked. The beam passed over him, paused for a second, then moved on. Eli didn't breathe. Not until it was gone. Good, he whispered. Keep thinking I'm nothing. The first soldier stepped into the ditch. Low, careful, weapon ready. Eli didn't move. Another soldier followed. Then another. 3 inside now. Eli's eyes moved to a small metal piece near his foot. A broken panel, slightly loose. Placed earlier. On purpose. The first soldier stepped forward. Panel shifted. A sharp metallic sound echoed. All 3 froze. Too late. Eli pulled the wire. Spark flashed. Boom. A small explosion shook the ditch. Dirt flew into the air. The soldiers lost balance. Eli moved instantly. 1 down. Turn. Shot again. 2nd down. The 3rd one reacted fast. Too fast. Fired. The blast hit the wall near Eli. Dirt exploded beside him. He fell back hard. His ears rang. For a moment, everything went silent. Then pain hit. Dark. Burning. His arm. Eli looked down. A small burn across his sleeve. Not deep. Close. Too close. He gritted his teeth. No mistakes, he whispered. Above, the enemy reacted. Fast. Precise. More soldiers moved in. But this time, they didn't rush. They surrounded the ditch again, keeping distance, watching, learning. They're adapting, Eli said under his breath. The leader stepped forward again. It looked down into the ditch, directly at him. For a moment, their eyes met. Eli felt it. That cold, calculating stare. Not angry, not scared, just thinking. Then the leader made a sharp sound. Command. The soldiers moved back. Eli frowned. What are they doing? A low hum started, vibrating through the ground. Eli's eyes widened. No, they were bringing heavy weapons. The ground shook slightly. A large machine rolled forward. Low, powerful. Siege unit. Eli felt a cold wave run through his body. That's overkill, he whispered. The machine stopped near the edge of the ditch. Its weapons slowly turned downward. Eli looked around quickly. No cover. No escape. If that thing fired, the ditch would be gone. Eli's breathing became faster. His mind raced. Think. His eyes stopped on something. That metal line again. Hidden under the dirt. Running along the ditch. A memory flashed in his mind. Training. Old lessons. Forgotten details. Power conduit, he said slowly. This wasn't just a ditch. It was part of something bigger. An old system. Buried. Hidden. Eli moved fast. Ignoring the pain. He dug into the dirt with his hands. Faster. Desperate. Above, the machine powered up. A bright glow formed at its core. Eli found the line. Metal. Cold. But still active. Very weak. But alive. Come on, he whispered. He pulled out wires from his broken scanner. Connected them. Carefully. Quickly. Bark. Nothing. The machine above hummed louder. Almost ready. Eli tried again. Adjusted the connection. Bark. Stronger this time. The line flickered. A faint energy pulse moved through it. Eli's eyes lit up. Yes. He pushed more power into it. Using everything left in the scanner. The line glowed. Brighter. Above. The machine paused. Its systems flickered. Confusion. Eli smiled. They didn't know, he whispered. The ground shook suddenly. Lights burst from the dirt. Old defense systems activated. Hidden turrets rose from the ground. Dormant for years. Now awake. The enemy stepped back instantly. Surprised. The turrets fired. Rapid. Precise. Enemy soldiers fell back. Formation broken. The siege machine tried to adjust. But too late. Direct hit. Boom. The machine exploded. Fire lit up the night. Eli fell back against the wall. Breathing hard. Exhausted. Silence. Retreat signals. Enemy units pulling back. West. Eli slowly looked up. The red lights fading. Disappearing into the darkness. For now. They were gone. Eli let out a long breath. His body felt heavy. Tired. Broken. But alive. He looked around the ditch. Now different. Not weak. Not useless. It had become something else. Something dangerous. Eli leaned his head back against the dirt wall. Eyes half closed. They thought this was nothing, he whispered. A small, tired smile appeared again. Now they'll remember it. The broken radio suddenly crackled. Weak. Barely working. Unknown defense. Repeat. Heavy resistance detected. Eli froze. That wasn't human. It was enemy communication. Intercepted. This is not a ditch. Repeat. This is not a ditch. Static. Then the final words came through. Clear. Cold. Backhand index pointing right. This position is a fortress. Eli closed his eyes for a second. Then slowly opened them again. Because deep down, he knew. This was not over. The night did not feel like victory. Felt like silence before a storm. Eli Carter sat inside the same ditch. But everything around him had changed. The ground was burned in places. Broken metal was scattered everywhere. Smoke still rose slowly into the cold air. The enemy had retreated. But not far. Not permanently. Just enough to think. Just enough to prepare. Eli lowered his head and exhaled slowly. His body was exhausted. His arms still burned from the earlier hit. His legs felt heavy like stone. But he did not sleep. He could not. Something in the air had changed. The broken radio on his chest suddenly crackled. Eli quickly grabbed it. No response came. Just static. Voice. Not human. Not friendly. Cold and broken. Unknown unit. Unknown resistance. Re-evaluating target. Eli stayed silent. Then another message came through. Clearer this time. Sector D-17, high resistance, anomaly confirmed. Eli's eyes narrowed. Anomaly. That was how they described him. Not a soldier. Not a unit. Just something they could not understand. He leaned back against the dirt wall. His mind was still sharp, even in exhaustion. They are changing their plan, he whispered. They will not come the same way again. A small wind moved through the ditch. Carrying ash. Carrying silence. Eli looked at his hands. They were shaking slightly. Not from fear. From fatigue. But his eyes stayed focused. Because now he understood something important. This was no longer a guard post. This was a battlefield. And worse. It was now known. Far away, beyond the darkness, enemy lights gathered again. But this time they were different. More organized. Stronger. Martyr. Eli slowly stood up. Pain shot through his body. He ignored it. He looked around the ditch. What was once useless soil was now something else. Hidden turrets, broken traps, metal lines still glowing faintly under the ground. He had turned a forgotten place into a weapon. Without orders, without help, without permission. And now, they feared it. Eli whispered softly. They will come again. He was not wrong. The enemy command center was already moving. Far beyond the battlefield, inside a massive floating carrier, commanders watched the data. Greens flickered. Red warnings flashed repeatedly. One commander spoke. This resistance is not standard. Another replied. It is one unit. Then silence. The first commander leaned forward. One soldier cannot stop a division. But the screen showed something else. Destroyed machines, failed units, confused signals. And at the center, a single marker. Holding. Still active. Still fighting. The commander narrowed his eyes. Send analysis drones. Back in the ditch. Eli suddenly looked up. Faint sound. Not wind. Not footsteps. Something above. He immediately rolled to the side. A small drone passed overhead. Scanning. Searching. Eli stayed perfectly still. Mud covered his body again. Breathing controlled. Low. Silent. The drone paused. Hovered. Its red light scanned the ground. For a moment, it almost saw him. Then moved on. Eli exhaled slowly. They are watching now. He picked up a broken metal piece nearby and threw it far away. The sound echoed. The drone turned instantly. Moved toward the noise. Eli watched it go. Smart. But predictable. He stood again. His body screamed in pain, but his mind was working faster than ever. They are learning, he said quietly. So I must learn faster. He walked along the ditch. Carefully. Observing every detail. Every wire. Every broken structure. Then he stopped. Something caught his attention. Panel. Half buried. Stronger than the rest. Not damaged like everything else. He knelt down. Wiped the dirt away. A symbol appeared. Old military marking. Forgotten. Eli's eyes widened slightly. This is not just a ditch. He traced the symbol. Power lines were connected beneath it. Deep systems. Old defense network. He stood slowly. Understanding forming in his mind. This was a hidden relay zone. That meant something important. Very important. He looked around again. Everything made sense now. The ditch was not random. It was placed, built, designed, and abandoned. A forgotten defense layer. Left behind in war history. Eli whispered. They didn't leave me in a useless place. A small smile formed on his face. They left me in a sleeping weapon. Suddenly, the ground trembled slightly. Not strong, but noticeable. Eli froze. Looked up. Far in the distance. New lights appeared. But these were different. Stronger. Brighter. More advanced. He whispered. Second wave. This time it was not scouts. Not soldiers. Not siege machines. It was something else. The enemy had adapted. And upgraded. Eli tightened his grip on his rifle. His exhaustion faded slightly. Replaced by focus. He looked down into the ditch one last time. This place is not a trap anymore, he said softly. It is a target. He checked his broken scanner. Still barely working. But enough. Signals increased. Fast approaching. Eli exhaled. Then I will make it worth it. He moved quickly now. Not hiding. Not waiting. Preparing. He activated remaining systems. One by one. Old defenses flickered again. Some weak. Some unstable. But alive. Above him the enemy formation spread out. This time carefully. No rush. No mistakes. The leader unit stepped forward again. It looked down at the ditch. Then raised its hand. A new command. Energy weapons powered up. All aimed downward. Eli saw it. And smiled slightly. They still think it is just a hole in the ground. He pressed a final switch. Deep under the ditch, something awakened. The ground began to glow faintly. Old systems responding. One last time. Eli stepped back into the center. Now. Strangely calm. He looked up at the dark sky. And whispered. Let's see what this forgotten place remembers. The enemy weapons charged fully. Light built up. Explosive. Bright. And then, everything paused. Silence. For one final second. Eli stood alone in the center of the ditch. Mud-covered. Exhausted. But unbroken. And then, the systems responded. The night broke slowly. Not with peace. But with silence that felt too heavy to trust. The battlefield that once screamed with movement was now still. Smoke drifted low across the ground. Broken machines lay scattered like dead metal bodies. And in the center of it all, the ditch still stood. Eli Carter did not move for a long time. He was sitting against the dirt wall, breathing slowly. His body was covered in dust, mud, and burn marks. His uniform, once stained with coffee and laughter from others, was now almost unrecognizable. He looked like he had survived something impossible. Because he had. The last wave had come. And the ditch had answered. Old systems buried under soil had awakened fully. Hidden defense lines, forgotten weapons, and emergency protocols had activated like a sleeping giant opening its eyes. The enemy had charged in with full force. And then, they stopped coming. Now there was only silence. Eli slowly lifted his head. The sky was turning gray. Morning was coming. His hands still shook slightly. Not from fear anymore. From exhaustion. From the weight of what had happened. He whispered softly to himself. It actually worked. But there was no pride in his voice. Only disbelief. He stood up slowly. His legs felt weak, but they held. He stepped forward out of the ditch for the first time since the battle began. The ground outside was unrecognizable. Burn marks, crater holes, broken armor pieces scattered everywhere. Machines that once looked unstoppable were now twisted metal. Eli walked slowly through it all. Each step felt unreal. Like walking through the remains of a nightmare. Then he stopped. His eyes focused on something ahead. A fallen enemy command unit. Large. Heavily armored. Its systems completely shut down. Eli stared at it for a long moment. Then whispered. You came for a weak point. He looked around. And found a wall you didn't understand. A faint sound broke the silence. Far away. Engines. Eli turned instantly. His body tensed. But then he saw it. Human ships. They were arriving. Slowly descending from the sky. First Eli did not move. He just watched. No celebration. No relief. Just silence. The first dropship landed at the edge of the battlefield. Dust rose into the air. The hatch opened. Soldiers stepped out. Fully armed. Ready for combat. But then, they stopped. They saw the destruction. They saw the battlefield. They saw the impossible outcome. One of them whispered. What happened here? More ships landed. More soldiers arrived. All of them seeing the same thing. A battlefield where a single ditch had held against an entire assault force. Then one officer stepped forward. Higher rank. Confident posture. But even he paused when he saw the scale of destruction. He looked around slowly. Then his eyes stopped. Eli. Standing alone. Covered in dirt. Still holding his rifle. The officer walked closer. Slowly. Carefully. You, he said. Ah, Cadet Carter. Eli nodded once. No emotion on his face. Just exhaustion. The officer looked around again. Then back at him. This position was marked as lost within the first hour. How are you alive? Eli didn't answer immediately. He looked at the ditch behind him. Then at the broken battlefield. Then back at the officer. Finally he spoke quietly. It wasn't lost. The officer frowned. What do you mean? Eli turned slightly, pointing behind him. The ditch. The ground. at the broken systems still faintly glowing under soil. It was sleeping. Silence. The officer looked confused, then walked closer to the edge of the ditch. He looked down. The hidden structure. At the old defense grid. At the systems no one remembered existed. His expression slowly changed. From confusion, to realization, to disbelief. This was an old relay defense zone. He whispered. It was supposed to be decommissioned decades ago. Eli nodded slightly. Not fully. The officer turned sharply. You activated this. Eli shook his head. No, I survived it. Behind them more soldiers gathered. Whispers spread quickly. Confusion. Respect. Fear. Because reports were already coming in. Enemy forces had completely withdrawn from the sector. Entire units lost. No explanation. One soldier spoke quietly. They're calling it the fortress ditch. Another added. No, they're calling it a warning. Eli heard it, but said nothing. The officer looked at him again. This time differently. Less like a cadet. More like something else. Something they did not yet understand. You held this alone, the officer said. Eli replied simply. I was told to guard it. The officer nodded slowly. You did more than that. As the sun rose higher, the battlefield slowly revealed its full scale. Destroyed enemy machines stretched far beyond sight. What was once considered a weak sector had become a graveyard of an entire assault force. Command ships above began transmitting rapidly. Data, reports, warnings, and one message repeated again and again across military channels. Sector D-17 is no longer a weak point. It is not a trench. It is not a defensive line. Then the final line. It is a fortress built by one cadet. Eli stood quietly as soldiers moved around him. No one spoke loudly anymore. Even the usual noise of command felt smaller here. Someone approached him with a med kit. Another brought water. But Eli barely reacted. He just looked at the ditch. Welcome. Quiet again. As if nothing had ever happened. But everything had changed. The officer came beside him one last time. You will be reported immediately, he said. You understand what this means. Eli looked at him. For the first time, a slight emotion appeared. Not pride. Not fear. Just understanding. Yes, Eli said softly. Then he added. But it wasn't me. The officer frowned. What? Eli turned slightly toward the ditch. It was the ground they underestimated. A long silence followed. Then, far away, a final transmission came through intercepted enemy channels. Broken. Distorted. But clear enough to understand. Do not engage Sector D-17 again. Repeat, do not engage. That place remembers war. Eli closed his eyes for a moment. The wind moved gently across the battlefield. Cold. Quiet. Finally peaceful. But deep down, he knew something simple. This was not the end. It was only the beginning of what people would start calling a legend. And it all started with a coffee-stained cadet, left alone in a ditch.